get a little more comfortable. Hello, everyone. I am wearing sunglasses inside. No, I'm not hungover. Yes, I am catching a vibe. That's all I have to say about it. If you're new here, welcome. And if you're coming back, thank you so much. And I love you too. Guys, I really hope that you are one of the many people who listened to the last episode I did on exposing the double standards in media and the RFK Jr. sexting scandal. Yes, you heard me right. No, I wish I didn't have to say those words together in a sentence or like ever. But go back and listen. A lot of you guys liked that. And I am grateful for those of you who emailed or reached out and DM'd me and told me that what I was talking about resonated with you, that either, you work in healthcare or law or some other fields that you guys wrote in about, and how you feel isolated at work or singled out or like an outsider in different ways. And I feel for you. And I'm just glad that what I'm talking about is resonating with some of you guys so far. And please keep writing in. I love to hear from you guys. So thank you. This podcast is all about politics, pop culture, and personal growth. And we're diving into the political madness of our time with a clear head and a little bit of side eye. Today, I'm asking a pretty wild question, and I'm not joking about it. Okay? You ready? Does Donald Trump remember that he was president? I'm being dead serious, you guys. Does Donald Trump remember that he was president once? And if he does, why is no one asking him to explain the massive contradictions between what he's saying now in his 2024 campaign for president and what he actually did while in office? I'm not talking about Trump misremembering small details, you guys. I'm talking about policy reversals, healthcare, foreign relations, immigration, the economy, issues that literally shaped his presidency and now seem to be completely reimagined. Not just by him, by the way, but also by his running mate, JD Vance. It's frustrating because the media has largely let these contradictions slide, but if you actually listen closely to what he's proposing for 2024, it's fair to ask, how can voters trust him if what he's proposing now directly contradicts what he did in office? Okay, guys, let's take healthcare as one example, as the first example of many that we're going to get through. During his presidency, Trump repeatedly promised to deliver a better, cheaper healthcare plan. He promised that it would replace the Affordable Care Act entirely with something superior. He had all of the promises. But did that happen? No. Despite several attempts to repeal the ACA, the Trump administration never introduced a comprehensive replacement plan. Of course, he slapped voters in the face once again at his debate against Kamala Harris, where when asked by the moderators to provide a plan that would replace the Affordable Care Act, he said, "I have concepts of a plan," and could not give any specifics. What a joke. He wants to be president. He literally has run on repealing and replacing Obamacare for years. He got the entire Republican Party to run on that, which, by the way, contributed to many of their losses in the 2018 midterms, to the point where just like a few weeks before the midterms, they all did like a 180 and were like, no, we actually do support people with pre-existing conditions. Don't worry. We do care about you people with pre-existing conditions. We're not coming for your health care. Don't worry. We never said that. That was a joke. We were just kidding, guys. Obviously, voters didn't buy it because we're not stupid. But Trump makes his entire party look like fools when he has them running on repealing and replacing the Affordable Care Act. And to this day, when he wants to be president again, he still does not have a comprehensive replacement plan. More than that, let's not forget JD Vance straight up gaslighting America at the vice president debate when he literally said that Trump saved the Affordable Care Act. I don't know what was going on with him in that moment, but it was not a good look. Talk about your brain malfunctioning. It's like word salad at best, gaslighting at worst. Anyway, fast forward to today, and Trump is literally back on the campaign trail once again, promising healthcare reform. He's saying things like, oh, we'll fix the system, but there's literally no explanation of why he couldn't do that when he had the power to do so. While we're talking about healthcare and I'm getting worked up, let's not forget that he's trying to pull off this insane shift on abortion, flip-flop on abortion. I mean, it's like every other week he has a different position on abortion, and half the time I don't even think he knows what he's saying, whether he's saying that the federal government is going to pay for IVF treatments, or he thinks that Florida's 6-week ban is too strict and he's going to vote against it, or actually no, maybe he's going to vote to uphold it because he got a call from some angry pro-lifers. I mean, sorry, anti-abortion folks, some angry anti-abortion folks who then had him changing his tune. Anyway, he obviously ran on promising to overturn Roe versus Wade. He obviously appointed Supreme Court justices who did just that, who went on to reverse Roe v. Wade in 2022. Somehow, that hasn't stopped Donald Trump from now trying to fashion himself as some sort of defender of women's rights. Someone who will stand up and protect women in spite of being found liable by a jury of sexual abuse against E. Jean Carroll. But I digress. I mean, he literally wrote on his little Truth Social platform the other day in all caps, "You will no longer be thinking about abortion." What does that even mean? What does that even mean? We won't be thinking about abortion. Why? Because it'll be outlawed everywhere? Because it won't even be on the table. It won't be an option anywhere under any circumstances for anyone at any time. Because there's no other interpretation there, Trump. You're the reason that our reproductive rights and freedoms are literally being taken away. And yet he's trying to pull off the flip-flop of the fucking century by all of a sudden claiming he's going to protect women and defend women's rights. Don't even get me started on Melania's weird memoir, the photo shoot for the book, the art design for that, the creative direction decisions for that, very questionable. But more than that, what is she doing talking about women having the right to make decisions with their own body and about their own bodies? Like, I'm sorry, what? Have you spoken to your husband? Have you called him? Have you spoken to him? Because you guys are not on the same page, and you're not going to convince people that he's like actually a defender of women's rights by saying all of this. Okay, moving on to immigration. I think this one should be a much bigger deal, given it's literally like a staple of Trump's political identity. Build the wall. Anyone? In 2016, he said he was going to build a wall and Mexico was going to pay for it. Remember that? That didn't happen. Now in 2024, Trump keeps saying that he wants to build the border wall, but he has not offered any semblance of a new plan or explanation for how he would be able to do it this time, given, again, that did not happen when he was in office. Instead, he focuses on demonizing and otherizing immigrants in this country. He's now gone so far as to threaten to deport legal immigrants in this country after stirring up some crazy conspiracy theories about Haitian migrants in Springfield, Ohio, which I don't even have to repeat here because you know exactly what I'm talking about. He focuses almost exclusively on this tough guy rhetoric around mass deportation. They're like mass deportation fantasies at this point. But how could anyone believe him on that either? How could you even believe him on his threats to pull off the mass deportation of the century when he literally deported fewer people during his time in office than Barack Obama did in either of his terms? Or, I don't know, Joe Biden? Joe Biden has deported more people during his presidency than Trump did. What's the explanation for that, Donald Trump? Like, I wonder if all the people who love Trump for his tough on immigrants stances and his rhetoric that really just like puts a target on their back, if those people care about the facts, or is it just vibes entirely and they actually want someone who will make the problem worse? Because the only thing Trump has campaigned on and instructed Republicans to do and has done himself when he had all the power is anything that would make the problem worse and nothing to make it better. But where's his explanation on that? How are we supposed to believe that he'll do it this time around? Oh, we just trust him? We're just trusting his word? Okay, got it. Let's move on to the economy. Another top issue for voters. In fact, the top issue for voters in almost every single poll taken this cycle. Trump now is proposing that there should be no tax on tips, which is so politically popular that even Kamala Harris has been campaigning on that same proposal. But a quick reality check shows that during Trump's term in office, he literally allowed employers to take tips from workers that those workers received. Trump sought to allow employers to take tips from their workers. Another example on the economy, J.D. Vance, his own running mate, has called for the child tax credit to be increased to $5,000. That's more similar to Kamala Harris's plan than Trump, who in 2017 passed his signature tax cut legislation, which only increased the child tax cut credit from $1,000 to $2,000. Of course, Trump loves to act like he's pro-worker. But during his time in office, the National Labor Relations Board was super business friendly, and judges that Trump himself appointed consistently ruled against workers and were famously anti-worker. They even went so far as to block a rule against non-compete agreements, and they sided with a company that argued that the National Labor Relations Board itself as an entity is illegal. How can you be pro-worker if judges that you appointed and sought out sided with companies who argued against pro-worker boards and establishments and entities? It's not funny. I just don't get it. But it's not funny. And then most recently, there's this whole deal with the SALT tax, the state and local tax deduction, which Trump has been calling to roll back a major part of that signature 2017 tax cut legislation I was just talking about. He has been talking on the campaign trail saying that he would seek to reinstate the SALT deduction, which he capped when he was president. He wrote on Truth Social that he would get SALT back and lower your taxes if he returns to the White House. And it's like, he had the opportunity to do that when he was in the White House the first time, and instead he did the exact opposite of that. He did the exact opposite of what he is now proposing when he was in office. I mean, for whatever it's worth, he also just has like a very unserious approach to taxes and lowering taxes. And it's like every time he's campaigning in a new state or in front of a new group, he's proposing some sort of hyper-specific tax cut for that constituency. And he has a flawed understanding at best about how tariffs work. But like, I guess we can take those proposals with a grain of salt. These are just a couple examples, you guys, of where Trump's campaign promises this year in 2024 do not line up at all with what he actually did when he was president. And I think that should matter. It's almost as if he's trying to rewrite his own record. And yet we don't see reporters or moderators holding his feet to the fire. Why isn't he being asked to explain these contradictions? Now let's talk about the media's treatment of Kamala Harris, especially since she's become the Democratic nominee for president. Since her nomination, there has been a constant narrative that Harris is flip-flopping from the positions she took in 2020. The media loves to dissect any single perceived shift in her platform often framing it as some sort of evidence that she lacks conviction or is like trying to play both sides and pull a fast one on people. Take, for one example, the critiques that Harris is too focused on values and isn't offering enough policy specifics. This has become a key talking point from conservatives on the right, and unfortunately something that has been picked up in media coverage as well. Despite the fact, you guys, that she has literally released an 82-page economic policy plan. A plan that lays out clear strategies for things like job creation and addressing income inequality, making housing more affordable. But instead of focusing on that, most media outlets are grasping for straws, writing stories about her past positions like fracking or even banning plastic straws. Yes, you heard that right, plastic straws. There are articles dredging up her 2020 stance on banning plastic straws as if that's a critical issue in this election right now. It's almost comical when you compare all of this to the treatment that Trump has received on his much more consequential policy contradictions. And again, they are clear contradictions. We've learned about Trump's past positions, like his failed promise to deliver better health care or his inconsistent stance on foreign policy and immigration. But the media coverage on Trump is nowhere near as nitpicky. I feel like what we're seeing is a media machine that is simply obsessed with this idea of flip-flopping when it comes to Harris, even when the evidence doesn't support it. Sure, like any politician, Harris's positions have of course evolved since 2020, but evolving doesn't mean flip-flopping. Political realities change and candidates adjust their stances based on new information, voter needs, and political feasibility. That shouldn't be radical. That should be celebrated, in my opinion. But instead of digging into her actual policy proposals, which offer detailed economic plans, the media is running stories that feel like they're designed to make her look inconsistent or unfocused or not smart enough to do the job. It's almost as if they're looking for some sort of gotcha moment to question her authenticity, her intelligence. What's particularly frustrating to me is that these critiques are obviously so surface level. It's easy to point out that her position on fracking has shifted without acknowledging that fracking is an issue where public opinion and environmental realities have also shifted in recent years. Now, guys, let's compare this to how the media is treating Trump. When it comes to Trump, we're talking about someone who has completely reversed his position on major issues like healthcare and foreign alliances and immigration and the economy. All of these things without facing a similar kind of relentless scrutiny. I mean, remember, Trump promised everything from better healthcare at a fraction of the cost to trashing NATO as being obsolete without ever having certain plans to make those things better. It just seems that, unfortunately, it's easier for a lot of folks to report on the spectacle of Trump instead of taking the time to ask him or his supporters to reconcile these very real, very massive contradictions that should put off alarm bells. They should totally sound off alarm bells for his most ardent supporters, especially those who want him to actually do something about immigration, who want him to make the economy better, who care about their reproductive rights, their ability to start a family. Meanwhile, it's like Harris is getting dragged for every minor adjustment that she makes in her platform. At some point, we have to ask ourselves, why are we so fixated on these supposed flip-flops from Harris while giving Trump a pass on much more substantial contradictions? What is it about us? What do we like about those things? Harris is being painted as vague or evasive on policy, despite the fact that she has clearly laid out her platform. When the conversation is reduced to trivial matters like plastic straws or whether she's gone soft on fracking, we lose sight entirely of the bigger picture. And that's exactly what's happening here. The point is, Harris couldn't change her stance on anything without being called out for it, and Trump should face the exact same treatment. I even think the VP debate is a good example with JD Vance of how Trump and his ilk get away with being completely hypocritical, unpredictable, wannabe leaders who are asking Americans to give them more power to make decisions over more things in their lives. JD Vance once compared Trump to Hitler, calling him America's Hitler, his words, not mine. And yet now he's one of Trump's biggest supporters, standing next to him to be his VP. When he's asked about this dramatic shift in his stance, he gets softball questions from reporters like, how can voters trust you? How can voters trust you? That's the easiest question in the world. A total layup that he can spin into a positive answer exactly like he did at the debate. There's no deep dive into how he could have gone from such a stark critique to full-on support for this person that he called America's Hitler. It is a fundamental shift in values at the very least, but most people just largely move on after the surface level question is asked and answered. I think it's crazy because JD Vance could have and should have been asked, okay, at what point did you change your mind about Trump? What did you see from him? What did he do? When was it that you changed and no longer considered him to be America's Hitler? When was that? And what did it take? What did that look like for you? So why do they get a pass? Why does Trump get a pass? It could be because his entire media strategy is to flood the airwaves with so much noise that all of his past positions and failures just get drowned out. By creating constant controversy, which he's great at, and focusing attention on other sensational topics, which of course he's great at too, Trump avoids the same kind of detailed scrutiny that other politicians face every single day. He's built a reputation of being completely unpredictable, which in some ways shields him from the typical fact-checking and policy analysis that you see applied to anyone else who would want to be president. But the media's role is to hold politicians accountable, and in Trump's case, they've largely opted not to. This allows him to rebrand his presidency without ever explaining why he didn't achieve the goals that he is now setting for 2024. Voters deserve to know why the promises he's making now are different from what he delivered while he was in office and had the chance to do all these things. Here's why this matters, you guys. Trust in leadership relies on consistency, no matter what side of the aisle you're on. If a candidate is making grand promises for their second term that directly contradict what they did during their first, we have to ask whether those promises are even realistic. The media plays a crucial role in helping voters navigate these contradictions that we're talking about. When Harris or Walz misspeak or adjust their positions, the coverage is intense and immediate. Yet when Trump, a former president, shifts his entire platform, the media seems content to focus on the drama rather than pressing him on the details. At the end of the day, voters need to know that politicians can be held accountable for their records. That's not happening here. Trump is being allowed to create a new version of himself for 2024 without ever having to explain what went wrong the first time around. We can no longer allow that to happen. Thank you guys, as always, for tuning in to In Sync with Alexi. I want to hear from you on this. So the controversial question of the week, why do you think the media lets Trump sort of slide on these contradictions while other politicians get grilled or totally dragged? I'm curious to hear your thoughts, so leave me a comment wherever you're listening. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, share this episode with someone you love or hate, and until next time, keep questioning, keep pushing, and keep showing up. Love you guys. Thank you. See you soon. Bye.